New Year's Eve. The table was set in the house I paid for, the house I fixed when the furnace failed, patched when the basement flooded, insulated when winter came early. The house I kept alive long after Becca had stopped believing she could. Candlelight flickered across wine glasses we never used. Napkins folded into fans. Roast lamb, not ham. Jaden hated ham. His plate was stacked. His future was stacked too, if we're being honest. Not with luck or legacy, but with me. With my time, my labor, my paychecks. He stood, fork still slick with gravy. 6'2", athletic build, scholarship ambition, ego to match. Wore that blazer I bought last spring. Charcoal wool, $149. 99 off-season at Macy's. I knew because I saved up for it. His mother said it made him look presidential. He lifted his glass. Smirked, maybe not. Hard to tell with Jaden. Everything he did felt like a test, and every time I passed, he moved the goalpost. To my real dad, he said, voice clear, eyes locked on mine. At least he showed up. And just like that, the air left the room. Lily went still. She was 16, quiet, and sharper than she let on. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. She knew what had just happened. She watched me, waiting. Becca said nothing. Her hand twitched around her glass. She didn't speak. Not to him. Not to me. She let it hang there. She let it land. That's when I pulled out my phone. No storm. No words. Just 4 taps. I logged into the portal, the college account I'd been funneling money into for 3 years. $300 a week. Auto deposit, never late. I found the financial aid disbursement section. Clicked, pause disbursements. Confirmed my identity and signed out. 40 seconds. No drama. No ceremony. And somewhere in that digital back end, Jaden's next semester just blinked red. The scholarships he applied for, the ones I coached him through, paid consultants for, hired editors to polish, they required proof of matched funding. Mine, now, incomplete, rejected, inactive. He was still standing with that glass in his hand, still staring, maybe waiting for me to speak. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. Let me tell you something. I've painted this house myself twice. I've worked overtime to pay for a car he scratched and never apologized for. I've sat in parent-teacher conferences while his real dad sent Snapchats from Cancun. I've paid for SAT courses, private tutors, orthopedic insoles for his flat feet. And every time I set a boundary, I was labeled controlling. Every time I asked for help with chores, I was not the boss of them. Every time I mentioned money, Becca would sigh and say, "They're not yours. Don't take it personally." But I did. I took it personally because I was personal. I gave them more of myself than I ever gave anyone. I thought that earned me something. Not authority. Not obedience. Just dignity. Instead, I was the ATM with rules. And rules made me a villain. When Jaden was 12, he called me Mike instead of Dad. I let it go. When he was 14, he told his friends I was just his mom's husband. I let it go. When he was 17, he slammed his door and said, "You're not even part of this family." I should have acted then. But I didn't. I waited. I hoped. Because I believed showing up was the answer. That sacrifice would bloom into gratitude. That one day, in some quiet moment, he'd look back and understand what it cost to carry someone else's weight for years without complaint. I was wrong. He toasted a man who'd missed birthdays and bailouts. He raised a glass to a ghost. Jaden's father, Michael Sr., was the kind of man who coasted through life on charm and short bursts of effort. He'd show up with new shoes and old stories. Promises without calendars. Love that took weekends off. But Jaden adored him. Because absence can be romantic when it's dressed in apologies and AirPods. I was the one who showed up Monday through Friday. The one who said no when no was necessary. The one who checked his tire pressure and washed his jersey before every game. But I never got the toast. I never got the speech. I just got the bill. Becca's silence that night wasn't new. It was the echo of every time she refused to defend me. When Jaden yelled, she said, "He's just processing." When Lily rolled her eyes at me, she said, It's a phase. When I asked her to back me up, she said, "Don't make me choose." She didn't have to choose. She already had. It had always been me against the memory of a man who didn't earn his place. And somehow I kept losing. After dinner, I cleared the plates. Alone. Jaden disappeared to his room. Lily vanished. Becca poured herself a second glass of wine, sat on the couch, turned on a rerun. She didn't ask what I'd done on my phone. She didn't want to know. That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathing. I remembered when we first met. Her laugh was easy. Her trust was hard-earned. She had just finalized her divorce, and I thought I was stepping into a life that needed structure, support. But what I stepped into was a vacuum. A role no one wanted me to fill, but everyone needed me to. I was supposed to fix things without asking for thanks, to pay without having a say, to love without condition, even when respect was withheld. For years, I convinced myself that consistency was enough, that if I just kept showing up, things would shift, that if I worked hard enough, gave long enough, forgave often enough, they'd love me like I mattered. But the truth is, you can't earn what someone refuses to give. You can't build trust on someone else's denial. And on New Year's Eve, Jaden made that denial public. He didn't just dismiss me. He honored the man who abandoned him, and did it in my face. I thought about the receipts, the endless transfers, the hours on hold with the financial aid office, the FAFSA forms I filled while he played video games, the nights I stayed up reviewing his essays line by line because his father wasn't good with words. All of it erased with a sentence and a smirk. Some people ask what betrayal looks like. It looks like a 19-year-old boy in a fitted blazer, raising a glass in your house, with your food in his stomach and your sweat in his future, and calling someone else Dad. That night I slept cold, not out of anger, out of clarity. It took 17 words to undo 17 years of effort, and it took me 40 seconds to stop paying for it. I didn't speak to Jaden the next morning. Didn't need to. The scholarship portal had already updated. The email came at 8:17 a.m. Action required. Funding source invalid. I saw the subject line over my coffee. Didn't open it. I already knew what it said. His account was frozen. His future was on hold. I left it sitting in the inbox like a forgotten invitation. I didn't reply. I didn't warn. I didn't remind him of what I'd done. That wasn't my job anymore. Instead, I went to the garage and pulled out the receipts, 2 years' worth. Manila folder thick enough to choke on. Every check, every transfer, every invoice with my name under payer. I laid them out across the dining table like evidence, because that's what they were. Proof of a man on trial in his own home. College fees, textbooks, dorm deposit, campus card reloads, online courses, cleats, travel team dues, orthodontics, meal stipends, SAT prep, SAT retake, SAT coaching, Uber gift cards for late nights, Spotify Premium $9.99 a month for 3 years. I sorted them chronologically, stacked the printouts, wrote a single sentence on top. Starting today, I pay for necessities only. Extras are frozen until respect returns. Then I scanned the whole thing and sent it to Becca's email. Subject line, clarity. She replied an hour later. You're ruining his future. I answered just once. I'm done funding my own humiliation. She didn't respond again. I waited. A week passed. Jaden didn't come to me. Not at first. He went to her. I heard the muffled arguments behind their bedroom door. Phrases like, overreaction, and just a joke. And he can't do this to me. That's how he framed it. Something being done to him. Like all this just happened. Like the years didn't matter. Like the hand that fed him suddenly closed for no reason. 3 days later, he called me. I was in the garage again, fixing the upstairs toilet valve with borrowed tools and an aching wrist. He didn't start with hello. You froze my tuition? I paused mid-turn, adjusted the wrench. Correct. His breath caught like he hadn't expected me to say it. You didn't even talk to me. I stood slowly, wiped my hands on the rag that still had Lily's hair dye stains from last summer. You gave a toast to the man who abandoned you. In front of me, in the house I pay for. That was your statement. This is mine. He was quiet for a moment, then snapped, "This is petty. You're acting like a child." "No," I said. "I acted like a father for 7 years. What I'm doing now is acting like a man who heard the message loud and clear." His tone shifted, anger curling at the edges. "So what, you're just gonna cut me off? Throw me away over one comment?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't let the ache in my chest speak louder than my sense. "I'm not throwing you away. I'm stopping payment until there's a plan. I want to see what you contribute, what you earn, what you're willing to do. I have class. I don't have time for some job." "Then you don't have time for college." He went silent again. Then came the text 2 nights later. "You're not my real dad. Mom says you're just being bitter." I stared at it for a long time, not because it hurt, though it did, but because I realized it wasn't written in anger. It was written in belief. A statement he felt was true, and that was worse. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the receipts, the documents, the account summaries, everything to his school counselor. Not out of spite, out of necessity. If Jaden was going to pretend none of it happened, then someone had to keep the record straight. Let the system see who showed up. Let the forms show who paid the dues and who just showed up for photo ops. The next week, the house felt like 2 planets sharing the same orbit, never touching. Becca stopped cooking dinner. Jaden stopped saying goodnight. Lily stopped talking to either of them. The silence thickened like soup. I watched Jaden flail behind a wall of pride. He started skipping meals, stayed out later, tried pretending it didn't matter. But it did. His coach called me that Thursday. I'd always been the contact, the emergency number, the one who filled out the medical waivers. "He's slipping," coach said. "Not in performance, in focus. He's distracted." I told him the truth. Coach sighed. "Well, if he wants to play winter tournament, he'll need the funding soon. That slot closes next month." That night, I sat at the dining table. Same place he'd made his toast, and I built a plan. A trade-off. Jaden could play, but only if he worked. Youth clinics on Saturdays. Scoreboard duty at JV games. He'd cover half the cost from his part-time pizza job. The other half, mine, would only come if he followed through. Written plan. Attendance. Deadlines. I didn't text him. I printed it out. Taped it to his door. 2 days of silence. Then one morning, the paper was gone. Week later, coach called again. 2 clinics done. Showed up early. No attitude. Just work. I nodded. "He submit the plan?" "Yeah. It's handwritten. Bit messy. But it's a start." He paused. "He's different. Small things. Says thank you now. Sent me game film with assists instead of just scoring highlights. He's seeing the court different." That stuck with me. He's seeing the court different. Because it wasn't about basketball. It never was. It was about understanding the game. About seeing that no one wins alone. That effort has to be shared. That support isn't free. It's a privilege, not a birthright. That weekend, Jaden texted me his grades. No sarcasm. No emojis. Just numbers. Solid ones. Then, "Can you check the reel I'm cutting? Need help with audio levels." I helped. Quietly. Without fanfare. We didn't talk about the funding. We didn't talk about the toast. But something shifted. Not in words. In tone. He didn't grovel. I didn't soften. But the wall cracked. That Monday, I went to the bank. I opened a separate savings account in his name. He doesn't know it exists. I fund it quietly. Every time he shows up to a clinic, every time he works, every time he asks for help without entitlement, it grows. It's not a reward. It's not a bribe. It's a record. A ledger. Not for me, for him. Because one day he'll need to know that effort adds up. That respect earns investment. That the people who show up aren't always the ones with the biggest speeches. They're the ones still standing when the cheering stops. I'm not buying his love. I'm investing in a kid who's learning the difference between entitlement and earned trust. Becca hasn't said much. She still walks on eggshells around him. Around me, I think part of her still wishes I hadn't drawn the line. Wishes I had let it go for the sake of peace. But peace without respect is a slow kind of death. And I'm done dying quietly. The first time Jaden knocked on my office door, he didn't open it. Just knocked. Once. Quiet. Then slid a flash drive under the door like a truce offering and walked away. It wasn't an apology. But it was a beginning. The drive held 2 video files. His college highlight reel, rough cuts stitched together in Windows Movie Maker, frame drops, bad transitions. But I watched all of it. Twice. The first version was the one I expected. Dunks, 3-pointers, fast breaks, solo glory. The second version was different. Longer cuts, slower transitions, more assists, more passing. Shots of him clapping for teammates, not just flexing for the camera. It was less about dominance, more about presence. That second reel was the one I helped him edit. And I didn't say a word to him when I emailed it back. Just attached the clean file and wrote, "Use this one. It shows you're more than a player. It shows you're part of something." That was a Tuesday. He didn't reply. Not immediately. But that Friday, when I came home late from work, I found a new note taped to my office door. "Thanks. Coach liked it. Said it felt mature." No name. No emojis. Just that. I stood there for a long time holding the paper in my hand. I didn't smile. But something in my chest, something that had been stone for weeks, shifted. Not melted, but moved. Becca noticed, I think. She never asked what we were exchanging. But she started looking at me longer in the mornings like she was trying to decide if this version of me, the one who drew lines, who didn't bend anymore, was someone she still recognized. She never said thank you. Not once. But the silence between us was changing. Less like tension. More like waiting. Jaden started texting more. Not small talk, always task-focused. A textbook he couldn't afford. A deadline he almost missed. A form he didn't understand. I answered. Briefly. Never rushed. Never too eager. I was teaching him boundaries without saying the word. If he asked for help, he got it. But no freebies. No blanket coverage. He learned to phrase things like a partner, not a customer. Instead of, "I need this by tomorrow," he wrote, "Can we figure this out together?" That word, "we," didn't solve everything. But it meant something. One afternoon, I saw him doing dishes after dinner. No one asked. No fanfare. Just soap and water and silence. I walked by without comment. But I saw it. And he knew I did. Later that night, he knocked again. "I'm thinking about summer programs," he said. "Might need help. But I want to pitch you first." I nodded. "Sit down." He sat across from me, pulled out a notepad. Handwritten estimates. Partial costs he'd already saved. Scholarships he'd bookmarked. Work hours scheduled at the pizza shop. Even offered to pick up some yard work if needed. He stumbled through parts of it. Got flustered trying to sound confident. But he showed up prepared. When he finished, I asked just one question. "Why now?" He shrugged. Looked down. Picked at the corner of his notebook. "Because I don't want to owe you," he said. "But I still need you." That stuck with me. He wasn't begging. He was admitting something harder. That dependence without contribution isn't freedom. It's debt. And he was finally trying to pay. I funded the rest. Quietly. No announcement. Just wired it in pieces as he met each milestone. One week he logged 25 hours. The next he covered his own books. By midsummer, he had enough saved to cover his own transportation. I matched his effort dollar for dollar. And each time he crossed a line, each time he delivered, the private account I opened in his name grew. Because this wasn't about money. It was about witness. I wanted a ledger that said, "You earned this, not because of blood, not because of guilt, but because he finally stepped into the space I had held open for him all those years." Lily noticed the change first. She started sitting next to him at dinner again. Asked about his classes. Made jokes again. Not the cold, sarcastic ones she used to aim like darts. Real ones. Curious ones. Becca remained cautious. She tiptoed around the transformation like someone afraid of waking a sleeping dog. But I didn't soften. I didn't chase anyone. I let them come or not come. I'd spent too many years lowering myself to be heard. Now I let my silence be the invitation. And Jaden was the only one stepping forward. The real shift came at the spring showcase. Crowded gym, parents packed into bleachers, college scouts with clipboards, coaches in polos, the smell of waxed floors and teenage sweat. Jaden played like a different person, not less aggressive, smarter, focused, pulled teammates into plays, passed instead of forcing the shot, took charges, called out rotations. He was leading. After the game, I stood near the exit, coffee in hand, watching from a distance. Coach stopped me. "You see that kid?" he said, pointing at Jaden. "That's someone who learned the game off the court first." I didn't reply, just nodded. "He's gonna be someone," Coach said, "because he understands the work. That's rare." On the drive home, Jaden rode shotgun. Becca sat in the back, her choice. Lily had gone with friends. The road was dark, quiet, the kind of silence where the only sound is tires on asphalt and things unspoken. Then Jaden spoke. "Would you really have kids with Sarah?" The question came out of nowhere. I blinked, took a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I would." He nodded too, staring out the window. "Because in that house," I said, "respect wouldn't be optional." He didn't flinch, didn't push back, just stared into the night. And I knew he understood. Some doors don't slam shut. They close slowly to keep the cold out, to protect what's inside. And if someone wants to come back in, they better know how to knock. Spring came early that year. The kind of warm that doesn't ask permission. It just arrives and dares you to believe winter was ever real. The frost melted off the backyard fence by the second week of March. The grass came back patchy, uneven, but alive. That's how Jaden looked too. Not fixed, not flourishing, but starting again. He spent more time at the library, less time behind his bedroom door. I'd come home late from work and find his shoes by the front door, laptop open on the coffee table, half a legal pad covered in diagrams, arrows, footnotes, scratch-outs. His handwriting was still terrible, but it was effort that didn't ask for attention. I didn't say much, neither did he. I let the distance shrink naturally, a process with its own rhythm, like spring thaw, slow, reluctant, but inevitable if you wait long enough. One evening, I came downstairs and found Lily sitting with him on the porch swing. She was laughing, not the brittle, sarcastic laugh she usually reserved for people she didn't trust. This one was easier, lighter. I stepped outside, and they both looked up. Jaden didn't look away. "Hey," he said. I said it back. We didn't make a moment out of it. We didn't have to. Growth, when it's real, doesn't announce itself. It doesn't explode into hugs and tears. It settles in like the smell of cut grass. Familiar, grounding, undeniable. Still, I kept my distance. Not out of cruelty, out of principle. Respect had to survive without supervision. Becca stayed quiet through most of it. She watched the shift like someone afraid to speak it out loud in case it broke. Sometimes she smiled when Jaden brought his plate to the sink. Sometimes she squeezed my arm after I helped him review his FAFSA renewal. But her silence still said more than her presence ever did. She was waiting to see if the storm had passed. I wasn't sure it had, because a storm doesn't just end, it leaves wreckage. And we were still walking through ours, pretending the debris was just part of the scenery. Then came the envelope. Thick cardstock, embossed logo, college seal in the top corner. I found it on the counter one Friday evening, unopened. Addressed to Jaden but with a sticky note on top. "Thought you'd want to see this first." His handwriting. I stood there with it in my hands, staring at the return address, the university he'd dreamed of attending since sophomore year. The one we toured during the snowstorm when Becca caught the flu and I drove him myself, for hours each way in silence. He never thanked me for that trip. Until now. I opened it slowly. Inside, congratulations. He'd been accepted into their summer mentorship program. competitive, small, fully funded minus travel and housing. Attached was a budget sheet. His own copy, his own notes, circled estimates, highlighted expenses, margins scribbled with calculations. At the bottom, a signature line for a cosigner. Not a demand, a request. I called him downstairs. He came. I read it, I said, holding the packet. He nodded. I'm impressed, I added. You did your homework. His face stayed still, neutral. But I saw it, that flicker behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted approval but didn't know how to ask for it anymore. You want me to sign this? He nodded again. Only if you want to. That stopped me. For years, I was the one who gave without being asked, who funded without being thanked, who offered before they earned. And now, here he was, asking with open hands instead of open expectation. I signed it, but I made a note in the private account I'd been building. +1 deposit. Respect offered freely. Jaden didn't smile. He just exhaled, like someone who'd been holding his breath for a year. Then he picked up the packet, thanked me, and left. Real thanks. Quiet. No sarcasm. Later that week, I sat on the porch alone while the sun sank behind the houses. Jaden joined me, 2 iced teas in hand. One for him, one for me. We sipped in silence. Can I ask something? He said finally. I nodded. That night, the dinner, the toast. He trailed off. I didn't interrupt. Why didn't you blow up? Why didn't you say anything? I let the question hang. Then, because I wanted my absence to speak louder than your words. He looked at me, eyes narrowed, not in defiance, in understanding. I think it did, he said. We sat there as dusk pulled the light out of the sky. In the weeks that followed, he changed more. Not radically, not dramatically, just small things. He asked about Lily's test scores. He thanked Becca when she made dinner. He left early for shifts and didn't complain when he had to miss games. He gave more than he took. And I matched it not with money, but with presence. We built a rhythm. He didn't call me Dad. He didn't have to, because I finally understood. I wasn't raising him to love me. I was raising him to become someone who could love others well. And that required pain, and consequences, and the fire of withheld comfort. One night, I showed him the savings account. His jaw tightened. Not out of greed, out of guilt. You didn't have to, he started. I know, I said. That's why it matters. He stared at the number. You'll have full access when you graduate. Not before. He nodded. Then he looked at me. Really looked. I was a jerk, he said. You were worse, I replied. He didn't flinch. Do you forgive me? I didn't answer right away. Not yet, I said. But I'm learning how. And he accepted that. Because now he knew forgiveness, like trust, has to be earned. Not owed. The summer mentorship came and went. He thrived. The feedback was strong. His coaches praised his discipline. One even emailed me. Said Jaden was a leader on and off the court. I forwarded it to Becca. She replied with one line. You did that. I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter. Because I wasn't sure anymore if you meant me or Jaden. Maybe both. And maybe that's what fatherhood is. Doing the invisible work that makes someone else visible. The fall came fast. Jaden packed his bags with more care this time. Folded his shirts. Took time with his goodbye. He shook my hand before leaving. Not a hug. Not a scene. Just a firm, silent thank you. I nodded. He walked to the car. I didn't follow. Becca drove him. She looked back at me once before pulling away. No tears. No drama. Just a family we had to rebuild by burning the old one down. The house was quiet after that. But not the lonely kind. The peaceful kind. The kind you have to fight for. The kind that comes when you've finally decided that love without respect isn't love at all. It's just servitude. I didn't pay for that lesson. I lived it. So now I ask you, whoever's listening, whoever's still reading, was I cruel for drawing the line? Was I wrong to let him fall so he could learn how to climb? Or is that the only way boys become men? When the people who carried them finally step aside and say, earn it. You tell me,